Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Scary Stories. This is the weekly podcast in which we relive and retell your true and real-life scary encounters. So, what exactly will we cover today? Well, that's for us to find out together. So sit back, relax, and let's get started with these user submissions. Number 1. The Snapchat Stalker. Not only is this a scary story, but it's also a warning to everyone. If you're ever going to give somebody your Snapchat or Instagram or any sort of social media information, you have to be very careful where you announce that information. Now, let me get you started with some context. This occurred 4 years ago when I started my second semester of college. While I was in my English 101 class, our professor had us break up into teams so that we could perform an ice-breaking exercise. I was in a group of 5, myself included, and at the very end of the class, the professor announced these groups would be the ones we worked with for future group projects. I honestly had no problem because one of the girls I teamed up with, who we're going to call Reen, was really sweet. She had actually come from abroad in Japan, and she came to the United States to go to university. Our university is notorious for foreign students, by the way, which is pretty awesome because you get to meet people from all around the world. Anyways, after a couple of days, Reen and I met up at a local Starbucks, and we were studying. It's here we exchanged Instagram, and I found out she was into drawing just like me. As if we already didn't hit it off. I then asked her if she had a Snapchat, but she said she wasn't really into it, but she did have one. I didn't want to pressure her, but I told her my Snapchat username anyways, and we left it at that. Later that night, while I was in my room studying, I received a new friend request on my Snapchat from a username I didn't recognize. In that moment, I thought about Reen, and I assumed maybe she was the one that sent me the request. But before I accepted it, I texted Reen just to confirm. After waiting about 45 minutes, I received no answer. Thus, I went ahead and accepted the request. Big mistake. Fast forward a day, and I still haven't heard back from Reen. It was weird, but since I would be seeing her tomorrow morning, I tried not to make a big deal. Anyways, I was once again studying when I received a message on Snapchat from that username, the one that I accepted the previous evening. It was a chat message, and it read, "Hey," with a smiley face following after. I replied with a hey back, and this time they sent me an actual snap. I opened it thinking I would see Reen, but instead, it's a chilling sight. It was a selfie of somebody in a hoodie wearing a mask and standing on the other side of my street. The caption read, "Hey gorgeous, I'm watching you." Now, in case you're wondering how I knew this was my house in the background, it's because I saw the same decorations. Whether or not this was some sort of sick joke, I drop my phone and I run over to the window. No kidding, that's where I was able to see somebody standing beside the street lamp. However, due to the fact it was so dim, it was incredibly hard to make out any details. I wasn't exactly sure what to do. That's why I run over to my dad, who was in the living room watching WWE Raw with my 2 younger brothers. The thing is, before I could say a word, I thought about this in my head. What was he going to do about it? That's why when he sees the look of concern on my face, I change my response to something completely unrelated, and I look out the living room window. The mysterious person was gone. Again, my father is asking me why I was acting so paranoid, and I finally decided to let him in on the situation. He unfortunately didn't believe me, but I think it's because he was so focused on the wrestling match, he wasn't really thinking clearly. So, I decided to return to my room and ask this stranger who they were. All they said were that they were a secret admirer and they wanted to get to know me better. I made the only logical choice. I blocked them and I leave it at that. Fast forward to the English class. I see Reen, and I ask her why she would try pulling some sort of sick prank on me. Well, she did give me an answer, but first, why she didn't respond to me. Turned out she had lost her phone, and she had to go to Verizon with her aunt to get a new phone. Now, the answer to this so-called prank. She was just as confused as me, which is further established when I show her the username. She didn't recognize it. To prove it, she reinstalls Snapchat, and she signs into her account. I got the chills, seeing a completely different username. So by now you're most likely wondering, if this wasn't Reen, then who could it be? I would get that answer a week later while I was home by myself. I'd been making some dinner which consisted of mac and cheese with some grilled chicken when I began to hear noise coming from the back porch. As we live in a well-forested area, we oftentimes get raccoons and other furry creatures that go through our garbage bins. That's why I grabbed some sandals so I could throw and scare them away. However, when I go to investigate the noise, I encounter a chilling sight. There was someone in a hoodie with their face covered completely, and they're holding a rusty old crowbar, attempting to budge open the window. I froze in place when suddenly he gets desperate and he smashes his way inside. No way was I sticking around. I booked it to my dad's room, where I grabbed the revolver he keeps inside his nightstand. By that time, the intruder enters the room, but I had the revolver pointed directly at the door. As I expected, the dude runs off, but not before I was able to fire a shot, missing him unfortunately. Now, I'm going to relay this next part, as I didn't actually witness it. While all the madness is occurring, my parents were just returning from shopping. They parked right behind a van which was currently occupying our driveway, which they thought belonged to one of my friends. This is a very important detail to remember because this was the creep's getaway vehicle. Without him being able to back up, he would have no chance to get away. My dad tells me that when he hears the firing of the revolver, he instructs my mother and brothers to lock themselves in the vehicle. Moments later, the home intruder runs outside and heads towards the van. But again, it was blocked off. My dad, being ex-military, instantly could sense that something was very wrong, and he has no trouble running after this man and tackling him to the ground, disarming him like child's play. Anyways, I think this submission is getting a little too long, wouldn't you say? So I'll just go ahead and jump straight to the conclusion. Officers arrived while my dad and another neighbor kept the guy detained, and they were able to eventually arrest him. When he was unmasked, I recognized him, but I just wasn't sure from where. He later confessed to police, who then relayed the information to my family, that he was at the Starbucks the same afternoon that Reen and I had been studying. That's why he looked familiar. Anyways, he overheard our conversation, and he wrote down my Snapchat as well as my Instagram. From there, he grew this unhealthy obsession and stalked me, where he later showed up to my house so he could, in his words, take me away with him to his cabin in the woods. Now, he did try to do that the first evening, but he got scared and left. The second time, he was a little bit more confident, and he actually went through with trying to take me away. That in itself is super creepy. But so was the rope and the duct tape they found in the back of his van. That was almost 4 years ago. And today, as I look back, I still wonder, why would somebody go this far? By the way, I'm still friends with Reen today. Hey there, I hope you're enjoying today's episode. Before we continue, I want to take this opportunity to thank my channel members, Robbie, Bo, Kim, Spunky the Nutcase, Tabitha, Ingrid, and our newest members, Evil's Girl, and Corey Shoneman. Now, if you'd like to help support what I do here, along with getting early video access and a shout out, then check out the channel memberships option. It's right next to where it says subscribe. Anyways, let's continue. Number 2. Late Night Train Creep. Hey there, Creepy Fox. I'm a huge fan of yours from Japan, and I just wanted to say keep up the great work. But I'm not just here to compliment you. I'm also here to share a creepy experience that I had 2 years ago. Also, I apologize if my English isn't the best. I have studied the language for almost 4 years, but I will occasionally make some mistakes, so pardon me. For context, I was part of a reading club at my university, and I had to stay a bit longer this afternoon, since I was helping with decorations for an end-of-year celebration. By the time my friends and I had finished decorating, it was close to 6:30 p.m., and I was starving. Myself and another friend named Katori came up with the idea of having dinner at a ramen shop that was only about a 5-minute walk from our university. The dinner was uneventful, say apart from the chef who performed various tricks for us patrons. So now we fast forward to after dinner. It's approaching 8 p.m., and Katori is walking with me toward the train station before she heads home. Now, Katori only lives a 10-minute walk from the university, but I myself had to take a train 30 minutes out of the city just to get home. Looking back on my trips to university, it was a bit annoying since I had to wake up earlier to accommodate for the transportation, but I guess that was part of the university life. Nonetheless, my train arrives, and I wish Katori a good evening. I then enter the train, which was completely empty. This was perfect, since it would allow me to rest off the meal I had just consumed, and also I could get a break from talking, since I was starting to get a sore throat. This peace and quiet, unfortunately, wouldn't last forever, because right before the doors closed, I saw a man get on the train very last minute. He looked middle-aged. He was wearing a mask and sunglasses. Quite the odd combination considering it's dark, but I understand there are some people with an eye condition that makes bright lights very painful. Anyways, I tried not to mind him as much as I take out my phone and start to catch up on the show I was watching. Not even into the opening credits, I see someone standing to my right in my peripheral vision. It was the man in the mask. The man never said a word. He just took a seat next to me, which gave me the chills. After all, here I was alone, with no sort of witnesses, next to a complete stranger wearing a mask and sunglasses. But then things got worse. I felt something pressed against my ribcage, and when I looked down to see what it was, I saw a knife. Now, since I wouldn't want to go back and forth between translating the Japanese conversation, I'm just going to go ahead and give you all the talking parts in English. That way it's a lot easier to understand. This, of course, is from my memory.
I'll make you a deal. Don't you dare move, or I'll make sure you never speak again.
Honestly, what choice did I have? After all, he was blocking my only way out. With panic in my voice, I say, "Look, I don't want any trouble. I'm just trying to get home. Take anything you want." Now I remind you again that he was wearing a mask, but I could see his cheekbones moving, sort of in a way to make it look as if he had a creepy smile. The man then instructs me to remain quiet until we got to my stop. He would then tell me what to do next. To be honest, I was thinking he was about to have his way with me. But then part of me thinks he wanted to wait until we got off of the train, and then he would lead me down some alleyway to do his dirty deeds. Those next 25 minutes felt like an eternity, as all I could do was sit there looking at the knife and hoping I would get a chance to get away. That never did happen. Instead, it was just this awkward silence until we finally reached my stop. Luckily, I was able to see a couple of people sitting on some of the benches in the train station. This would be my one and only opportunity.
I'm going to hold your hand. You're going to act like you're my wife. If you dare make any sudden movements, that's going to be it for you.
And hold my hand he did. For real, he left a pretty nasty bruise on my wrist from the force. Anyways, we begin walking off of the train, where I had noticed he had now put the knife in his pocket, most likely as not to raise anybody's suspicion. This was it, my one and only chance. Using what little memory I had of watching New Japan Pro Wrestling with my older brother when I was a kid, I used all of my small stature and my light weight to maneuver myself behind him and put him into an improvised arm hold. Of course, he was clearly stronger than me, but by that point I was able to loosen his grasp enough to get away and then run over to a group of older adults. The creepy man just looked at me for a second, as if to say, "You've got to be kidding me," before he just walks away. To say I was relieved would be a huge understatement, but I was also angry. I didn't want this creep getting away and trying this with somebody else. Luckily, 2 men who witnessed my ordeal went running after the man, and they managed to tackle him to the ground. They then secured the knife, while some others called over a security guard who had been patrolling the front of the train station. After a short back and forth, police officers arrested him, and I was driven back home. It took me about a year to get over the creepy encounter, and I am doing better today. But I will admit, I can't help but get paranoid sometimes when I'm by myself in public. But like I said, I have gotten better. Number 3. Uber driver stalker. There's a very big reason I have a hard time trusting any sort of public transportation, and it all stems from an experience I had 3 years ago with an Uber driver. Now let me just get one thing straight. I have no ill feelings toward Uber, but I'll let you be the judge on whether or not I should. At the time this took place, my Volkswagen Beetle was getting repairs done at a local mechanic shop. This meant that if I were to get to work, I would have to rely on the bus, or a taxi, or again, Uber. Now the nice thing is my work provides its employees with a bus pass, making my travels cost efficient. It was no issue during the daytime, but as I don't get out of work until almost midnight, I wasn't going to risk taking the bus at such late hours. This is due to a previous run-in with a man who tried to rob me. But that's a story for another day. I can definitely share it in the future if you're all interested. Moving on. Once I was out of work, I decided to get on my phone and call up an Uber. It searched, and I was connected with a driver that was 5 minutes on the way. No problem. I took a seat on a bench and I waited, where eventually my driver arrives. He was a middle-aged man, with a receding hairline and some short stubble.
"So, where are we off to, young lady?"
The man asks as he takes a sip out of his cup of coffee. "You'll just be dropping me off at my house. It's not too far from here." He then starts driving. Fast forward about 5 to 7 minutes of me texting my friend when I looked up from my phone and I could see that we were heading in the wrong direction. "Hey, I think your GPS is messing up there, buddy, because we're going in the wrong direction." He replies to my correction by explaining that there was a road closure and he was using the fastest available route. I let it slide for a minute, but then I noticed he was about to take a turn toward the freeway. There's absolutely, and let me make this very clear, absolutely no reason to be taking the freeway. "Look, I don't care what your GPS is telling you. Just drop me off at the corner. I'll take a cab back home instead."
"No, please. You don't have to do that. I'm not trying to fool you."
"Then why do we have your signal to enter the freeway? If you don't let me out, I'm going to call the police." Now, logically speaking, even if I did call them, I wasn't sure what they could do. Thankfully, I was able to convince him to finally take me the right way back home, and he drops me off. That wasn't without me leaving a lengthy 1-star review and contacting Uber support. All they said was they would look into the driver, and they would give me a full refund. Forget the refund. Why did he call me? Yep, you heard that right. The creep ended up calling me a few days later, asking of all things for forgiveness. But that's not before going into how I reminded him of his wife, and how he wanted to take me back to his house. Why? Well, he goes further to explain he wanted to, and I quote, "show me a good time." Needless to say, I was disgusted. I blocked the number, I contacted the authorities, and I never heard or saw him again. Number 4. Preventing an armed robbery. Here's a scary story for you. One day, my brother and I decided to go hitchhiking after having enough of our parents' constant arguments and bickering. We ended up being dropped off by a woman at a 24-hour gas bar in a town called Hope in British Columbia, Canada. Unfortunately, my brother had gotten carsick on the way there, mainly because of the smell of the driver, who had appeared to have missed the shower for weeks. So that's why we head inside to ask for the washroom. In there, we find a female cashier named Jenny, about 16 years of age, who tells us the washroom is in the back. She then leads us over, before returning back to her post. Not too long after we had entered, both my brother and I began to hear the voice of a male who's arguing and yelling various obscenities. I decided to take a peek outside of the washroom as my brother is cleaning up, and I'm able to see a man without any sort of clothing. But not only that, he was holding what looked to be like a Luger pistol. You know, those old-fashioned ones from the 1940s. Anyways, I whisper the details to my brother, and I tell him I was going to try and disarm him. Yes, I understand that's very dangerous. A part of me wouldn't have been able to forgive myself if something had happened to the girl. Thus, I come up with an idea. As quietly and as carefully as I could, I head to the frozen candy bar section, and I grab a king-size Charleston Chew chocolate bar from the freezer. Obviously, it was frozen solid, which meant when I approached the man as he was distracted, I whack him over the back of his head with all of my might. It was a knockout, and he drops to the ground almost instantly. Once we've secured the Luger, I go to check up on the cashier. She was just as surprised as we were, but she was thankful for our involvement. When police arrived a short time later, we were shocked to see that they had also brought the SWAT team. They yelled at all of us to drop to the ground, but Jenny assures them that we were innocent. Well, we later learned this man was a registered offender and had escaped from a halfway house. So, downright one of the scariest moments of our lives. Number 5. Home Break-In Nightmare. This is a story from when I was 14 years old, and it regards a time I dealt with some home burglars. Here's how it goes. It was one evening when my mom and dad had gone to this famous restaurant to celebrate their wedding anniversary. I was upstairs in my room, and at one point I wanted to go to the kitchen to grab a snack. About halfway down the staircase, I looked through one of our windows, and I saw a suspicious white van driving around my home. I shrugged it off, and I returned back to my room, snacks in hand. 30 minutes later, my parents called me, and they said they would be home later due to the fact that it began snowing heavily. I honestly had no problem being by myself, but they insisted I sleep over at the neighbor's house. That, however, didn't happen. I was able to convince them by giving them the "I'm old enough to be home alone" speech, and that seemed to work wonders. Now, so far, things seem pretty quiet and innocent, but that would change 2 hours later when I was awoken by the sound of the front door being hit by something. It was so strong that I heard the door burst open moments later. That's why I decided to go and check. But what I saw sent shockwaves down my spine. There were 2 men, one with a large knife and the other with a crowbar. Unfortunately, I was spotted, and they began charging toward me. I honestly was so scared I thought my heart was going to jump out of my chest. So I book it, and I lock my bedroom door, where moments later I can hear them attempt to break in. I had no choice. I had to jump out of my bedroom window. It's just that it's on the 2nd story, which made things that much more difficult. Soon, they were successful, and I had no choice but to jump. Once I land on the front lawn, I feel a sharp pain in my leg, which I later found out was it breaking. Luckily, the other leg was okay. I was in quite a lot of pain, but with the adrenaline rush, I'm able to make it over to the neighbor's house, and I rang the doorbell as many times as I could. The neighbors eventually let me in, and I explained what had just happened. They proceed to call my parents as well as the police. 10 minutes later, the police are able to find the two men. The one with the knife was hiding under my bed, and the one with the crowbar in a closet. Luckily, nothing was taken, and it turned out that both were wanted for armed burglary and various other assortment of crimes that still haunt me to this very day. Number 6. Cornered in the alleyway. Depending on when you include this story for an upcoming episode, my experience might be a bit outdated, but as of this writing, this occurred just last week. Also, please go easy on me. I understand there are a lot of bad people out there, but I'm that sort of person who likes to think positively. Not anymore. Anyways, let me begin. I was supposed to meet up with some friends at an Irish pub so that we could celebrate one of my friend's 23rd birthdays. Unfortunately, I had no transportation since my car was currently getting work done, and both my parents were using our remaining vehicles. This gave me the option of Uber or Lyft, but I decided to go walking. Now, I suppose I could have called up one of my friends to pick me up, but I'm that sort of person who has never liked to be a bother to anyone. Anyways, from my house, my downtown district is a straight 15-minute walk through the busy streets of my small Californian city. Along the way is a gas station, a car wash, a CVS pharmacy, and various other small businesses. So, I leave my house at around 8:30 p.m., only to realize I'd forgotten my friend's birthday card about halfway through my walk. I was honestly too lazy to go back and retrieve it from my desk, so I decided to stop at the CVS to grab another one. As soon as I approached the front entrance, a homeless man approached me and asked me if I had any change. I gave him a dollar bill, hoping to spread some good karma, and I soon entered to grab my card. Once I exited the CVS, I saw a couple of cats with some kittens that caught my attention. They were really cute, and I wanted to take a quick video so I could show my friends at the bar. The one who is turning 23 years old adored cats, so what a nice little talking point to start our conversation. I started to take a Snapchat of the cats as I followed them behind the CVS pharmacy. I narrated their walk as if I was Bear Grylls from Man vs. Wild. Unfortunately, I'd been so focused on the phone and the cats, I hadn't realized I stumbled into 3 homeless dudes who sat around talking.
Oh, hey, so you decided to come hang out with us, did you?
I look away from my phone and I'm able to see the same homeless man I'd given the dollar to. I began to get nervous as the 3 of them began to surround me. Each of them had that typical creepy smile of, "Jackpot, we got one."
Hey, what do you got in that purse of yours?
One of them says, as they attempt to reach into my purse. "Back it up. I'm not looking for any trouble right now," I exclaim, as I reach into my pocket to grab my pepper spray.
Oh, look, she's scared, boys. You better be. You be quiet, and we promise we'll make it quick.
The 2 that are in front of me then took out knives, and I instantly get the chills as they start to get closer. If there was any time to act, it was now. Without any regrets, I used my pepper spray, getting the 2 creeps in front of me. I then hear the one behind me call me a word I won't repeat here, before he tries to grab me. I manage to dodge out of the way, and I book it toward the front of the CVS. Just my luck, 2 police officers were just parking and exiting their vehicles. I pretty much screamed at the top of my lungs, and I managed to grab their attention. Unfortunately, by the time I look back, the guy who was chasing me just moments before had run back into the alleyway, disappearing. The officers then asked me what had happened, and I gave them a quick summary as to what took place. They then run into the alleyway, where moments later they returned with all 3 in handcuffs. Since I wanted to find out more information, I actually stayed around for a while, along with the crowd that had begun to form. Less than 10 minutes later, some EMTs arrived to check up on the guys I had pepper sprayed. Anyways, I gave one of the officers my information and they told me they would keep in contact, and the rest of the evening goes by fairly uneventfully. Just last night, I ended up receiving a phone call from a police officer who revealed more details of the men. One of them was concealing a pistol, and not only that, two of them had been previously arrested for a bunch of other outstanding crimes. Number 7. Facing an armed burglar. As a guitarist, I'm always looking for locations where I can perform my music. Honestly, I'll play anywhere. Coffee shops, birthday parties, on campus, wherever I'll get an audience. Since this creepy event, I actually started a band, and I've found a little more success in the music world, which is pretty sweet. But again, I want to focus my attention on this one evening. So, we rewind roughly a year ago, where a friend of mine, who we're going to call Naya, asked if I could be her guitarist for an evening. As her current guitarist had gotten sick and I had nothing better else to do, I gladly accepted the offer, thinking this could be another night to get some exposure. We ended up playing at this coffee shop called The Owl, and we had a great time, playing in front of about 50 people. Once the show was over, I actually gained a few new fans. Two of the fans in particular were fellow musicians who played as part of a brother and sister duo, which is very hard to come by these days. Anyways, we talked for some time, took some pictures, and then we all decided to walk over to a bar so we could grab some food and drinks. After all, I hadn't ate since lunch, and it was easily approaching 11 p.m. Once we were done, it's way past 1 in the morning, and my eyes were starting to become heavy. Naya and I bid a farewell to the brother and sister duo and the two other fans we had met, and then we head over to her car. I myself was parked just a little more down the way, but I didn't want her walking alone so late in the middle of a downtown district, especially considering there were already some instances of drunk creeps coming up to her and trying to get her to go back home with them. Once she had left, I start making my way to my truck, which was about a 5-minute walk from my current location down an alleyway. If you're wondering why I parked in an alley, it's because there was no parking in the street. Also, just so you know, I was holding on to my guitar, since I had forgotten my guitar case at my brother's house. Which, side note, never go anywhere without a guitar case. You're bound to get plenty of bumps and scratches on it. But I wouldn't have to worry about that for too long. At last, I could see my truck, and I breathed a sigh of relief knowing in less than 10 minutes I would be in my warm and comfy bed. However, my calm nature would soon change to one of panic when I'm able to see somebody attempting to open my passenger side door. "Excuse me, but can I help you with something?" I said aloud, with my voice echoing alongside the empty and dark alley. The person then turns their attention toward me, and I'm able to see them wearing a ski mask and also flashing a knife. I will say this wasn't some drunk dude from the bars. Without even getting another word, he charges toward me like a buffalo does out in the middle of a grassy countryside. I pretty much stood there frozen in disbelief until I did something incredibly bold. I want to blame this on my adrenaline rush, but with all of my might, I swing my guitar. I smash it over his head, like how Jeff Jarrett does in wrestling. This dude drops to the ground, and I book it to my truck, with the last sight I witnessed was him stumbling back to his feet. That was pretty much all there was to it. I had to get a new guitar and also a new case, because the guitar I purchased didn't fit in my old one. As for the guy in the ski mask, I can only wonder what exactly he might have been up to. Most likely it wasn't anything good. After all, if you're trying to break into someone's vehicle while wearing a ski mask and brandishing a knife, and then charging toward the car owner, don't be surprised when that person decides to smack you over the head with their guitar. Number 8. A sudden noise in my home. For preface, I'm male, and I was 29 years old at the time of this taking place. Now, let me begin. I used to live in downtown Chicago in a not-so-safe neighborhood. If I'm being quite honest with you, it wouldn't be surprising to hear shots at least once a week. Heck, there was one time I was watching Martin in my living room. No kidding. A round went flying right through my TV, completely shattering my window in the process. Yes, it was a very scary time, and I'm thankful I've gotten a better job to move to a more safer location. But this is a scary stories video. It wouldn't be any fun if I described the peace and quiet of my current living situation. Therefore, let's hit that rewind button, and together, let's go over this frightening encounter. It all started after a long and tiring day at my typical office job. I'd arrived only to be completely soaked from the current rainstorm we were having, tired, cold, and hungry. I decided to cheer myself up by making some cup of noodles and getting a bath going. This combo always seemed to work wonders, and this night was no different, because as soon as I stepped into the bath, all of the stress of being yelled at by my boss for things I didn't do disappeared into thin air. Because of this peace and quiet, I ended up falling asleep, only to be awoken about 30 minutes later by the sound of something crashing. Now, I do have 2 cats, which was why at first I thought I might have been hearing them. Still, even if it was those 2 rascals, chances are they'd caused some sort of mess. I think any of my friends out there with cats know that struggle. Anyways, I quickly dried myself off, put on some boxers and a t-shirt, and I take a peek out the bathroom door. What I saw still gives me the chills to this very day. There were 2 men wearing ski masks walking around in my living room, but worst of all, they had pistols. Right away, my number one concern was not only for myself, but my 2 cats. But logically speaking, what was I going to do? Even if I attempted searching for the cats, these 2 would have most likely saw me and taken me out on the spot. I had to take a chance, and I had to hope my cats would have been in my room, where I had previously seen them. Thank goodness, both had been hiding under my bed, with the hair on their backs standing straight up. Admittedly, I was doing the same thing. Now, with little time remaining, I decided my best course of action was to hide and ride this current situation out. But where? I couldn't fit under the bed like my cats. Well, that's why I chose my only other option, the closet. Thank goodness that I acted when I did, because just moments after I had hid behind a couple of boxes and covered myself with a blanket, I was able to hear the 2 intruders enter my room. I must have sat in there for what felt like an eternity, but was realistically only about 3 minutes, until finally I was able to hear their footsteps grow distant and the house grew quiet. I ended up sitting there for about another 20 minutes before I got the confidence to take a peek into my room. I saw my cats were laying on my bed, acting as if nothing had happened. As for my room, it was a complete mess. My drawers had been tossed to the ground. My Xbox One had been stolen, along with the 2 controllers. But that's not all they took. They made off with some money, my laptop, jewelry, and collectible Hot Wheels I kept on display. As for how they got into my home, I was able to determine that almost instantly. One of my living room windows had been completely shattered. Sadly, there wasn't much the police were able to do other than advise me to install the security system or change the locks on the doors. Luckily, I had a friend who knew a guy that could install some nice bars around my windows. He did it for very cheap, which was a great insurance to make sure I never dealt with burglars again. Either way, I ended up moving out less than 6 months later. Before we get to the final story, I just wanted to go ahead and give you all a quick reminder. If you're ever looking for extra content, whether it be art, previews, or sneak peeks, then make sure to follow me over on my Instagram at @thecreepyfoxofficial. Thanks, I'll see you there. But for now, let's get on to our final entry. Number 9. Strange noises coming from upstairs. I live on the outskirts of a small town in a 2-story apartment complex where I share a living space with another neighbor above me. She's really friendly, and on the off chance I see her, she will invite me over for dinner. The reason I mention on the off chance is because she travels a lot for her business. That wasn't an issue for me, however, since I have my own life. Plus, I work from home, which is an added bonus. Last month, she had just gotten 2 pet turtles and some goldfish, and she mentioned during one of our get-togethers she would be gone for a weekend. She then asked me if I could look after her pets and water her plants, going further to explain she would pay me for my troubles. $100. Sounded like a deal to me, so I gladly accepted the offer. Fast forward to the weekend my neighbor had left, and I was just finishing up an art commission for one of my clients. The time was roughly 7:30 p.m., and I decided to order some Domino's pizza. In the meantime, I would go upstairs to feed my neighbor's pets and water the plants. That went by uneventfully, and when I returned back to my room, I saw the notification that indicated the pizza was on its way. Sweet. I went to my kitchen to get a cup of ice for my drink, and 5 minutes later, my pizza arrives. Really nice delivery man, by the way. I decided to give him $10 because he's always very friendly to me. Anyways, not too long after I'd begun chowing down on my dinner, I began to hear a strange noise. Movement. Not movement from my living space, but from above me. As there had been wind and it was raining, I explained it away as the sound of Mother Nature. However, the more I listened in, the more I began to grow suspicious. So ultimately, I put on my raincoat and I made my way upstairs. The front door was wide open. It was swinging back and forth with the sheer force of the wind. That might have explained the banging I had been hearing, but not the footsteps. That's why I walk into my neighbor's home, where I could hear noise coming from the restroom. When I go and check, I found the source, what looked to be like a woman sitting in front of the sink, holding some sort of glass pipe. I will tell you this, it wasn't my neighbor. Whoever it was had long black dirty hair and wet, torn up clothing. "Hey, can I help you? I'm sorry, ma'am, but I think you've got the wrong house." The person stops what they're doing, and then they turn toward me. Well, it wasn't a woman like I'd originally thought. In fact, it was an older man with long hair and a beard. Suddenly, he took out a pocket knife, and he tried lunging toward me. But by that point, I was already heading downstairs and back to my apartment. The man followed me and began pounding on my front door, where he seemed to have given up after a minute or two. That didn't stop me from calling the cops on him. When officers arrived, they went up to my neighbor's living space, and they found him hiding under her bed. On his person, they found the same knife, a glass pipe, a small Ziploc with some grassy-type substance, and a lighter. Needless to say, he was charged and arrested, and I never saw him again. As for my neighbor's front door, it turned out that might have been partially my fault. Okay, maybe it was completely my fault. In my excitement to eat the pizza, I may have or may have not properly locked up my neighbor's home. That's most likely how he made his way in. By the way, my neighbor wasn't angry with me. She was just thankful nothing bad had happened. She's honestly such a sweetheart.